When I was a kid, I didn't really like this time of year. The Christmas and New Year's Eve parties were over, and I had gotten bored with whatever my favorite gift or toy had been. And, like we heard just a few minutes ago, I had to head back to school after 2 weeks of freedom. Honestly, it felt like some kind of letdown after all of the excitement of the holiday season. So what if we saw the ball drop in Times Square on TV, or made resolutions that we somehow knew we could actually keep? It was just a new calendar year. Big whoop. We'd just be going back to the same old routine, wouldn't we? Well, now that I've become an adult, my view has changed. I try to look to the new year and the end of the 12 days of Christmas with optimism, with new life. It's a beginning. The opportunity to remember and give thanks for what happened in the last year, or in some cases, to kick the last 12 months' events out the door, hoping to never have to deal with them ever again. Now, whether your view is one or the other doesn't really matter, though, because what holds true is that the new year, the new beginning, brings about a chance for a new life, and the chance to prayerfully seek where it is that God may be leading each one of us, and the chance to see where God is already living or dwelling among us. This morning's text from John's Gospel seems so perfect for this time, this interim, this new year. In this text, we have more than a beginning. We have the beginning. The time before time, when the Word, Jesus Christ, existed at creation. We hear echoes of Genesis, a creation of the world and of all things. But it's nuanced a little bit differently. We don't hear the day-by-day account of creation, and we don't hear about Jesus' birth, really. But we hear what we know to be true, that everything in all of creation came into being through God, through the Word. We also get these really interesting images of light, darkness, and life. And we even get a little bit of a glimpse into the life of John the Baptist and his mission. He was the one called to testify to Jesus' coming, to prepare the way for him. So this text is all about beginnings, creation, and witnessing to who Jesus is. It is about God breaking into our world with light and new, abundant life. But I have to wonder, does this text just mean that one beginning? I don't think it does. This life that was the light of all people still is the light of all people, for all people, for you. It was in the beginning, and it is in every beginning. This is my first weekend of worship with all of you, the people of God at Trinity Lutheran Church. I'm just learning about what makes this community of faith unique, and about your history, your current activities, and to an extent, where you hope to go and grow in your life together. What I'm learning is that God is doing so much in this place through things like Wowsome Wednesdays, women's group, choir, and local and global mission work, and your weekly worship. And still in other ways that I have yet to even learn about. I've only been here for about 4 days. There's a lot that I'm learning, and I'm loving every bit of it. I'm learning that the Word made flesh is living, dwelling among you, challenging you to serve and care for one another and for your neighbors, as Jesus did. That's so encouraging and awesome to hear as a leader, just in the few days I've been here. And it is my hope and prayer that these good activities and groups continue to thrive and grow as you discover what and who God is calling you to be through them and through times of change. But starting new activities and programs, even just being a cohesive community of faith, isn't easy. We start projects that fail, we argue, things change, and we often feel like we're at a loss or a dead end for whatever reason. Here most recently, you have had a good pastor retire after years of service. And you have a new person, me, rolling in just a few days ago. That is a huge change for a congregation. And it's one that can be difficult to wrestle with sometimes, a lot of the time. All of these things we face and deal with as a community are hard. And there does need to be space for frustration, sadness, and grief when it's needed. But the gospel in this is that these challenges are not the end. God is living and active always, never leaving us high and dry just because things become difficult. As our text tells us, the Word, Jesus, made flesh, the living God, broke through the darkness to bring us life and to bring us grace, mercy, and forgiveness. The opportunity to begin again each and every day as God's beloved children. In that, we find hope for positive things when we come to a new year, set new goals, or have questions about what the future will bring. The light still shines in the darkness, and the darkness will not overcome it. In our own individual times of darkness, even as a community when things are difficult, we may not see this light, but it's there. The author of John's Gospel tells us that, and we know that John the Baptist testified to it. So this has me thinking today, and throughout my past few days here, where and how can or do we as Christians today testify to what God has done in Jesus Christ, to what God is still doing in our churches, community, country, and world? Like I said earlier, and as you know better than me now, there's a lot of things going on here that give the chance to see what God is doing in our world. One example that I can think of through my visits and my first week here is that I've noticed that not many congregations have so many children from the community become part of their Christian education programs without first having their parents be members of the congregation. That's an awesome outreach that this place does. And it teaches our local kids about Christ and speaks to our being called to love our neighbor and to share our faith with them. Some Wednesdays are just one thing that I know of now that Trinity members do that brings God embodied in a different way to people who have some kind of need. And I believe that it is undoubtedly Spirit-led. And I believe that ultimately we are called to embody our faith and love for God and other people as we try to live our lives of love with one another, for one another, and in this world. We're called to witness, as John the Baptist did, as God's beloved children, born into a new relationship with God. A relationship that isn't ruled by busy schedules, conflicts, fears about the future, or even by failed New Year's resolutions, but rather by the one who brought all things into being, who has given us different gifts that point to or witness to that same one. So finally, what do we do with our new beginnings? Do we let opportunities pass us by only because they're scary? Or we see what God may be up to in them and prayerfully seek the path that God is leading us on. God's doing a lot of really good things here. I'm seeing it, and I know so many of you are seeing it too. There doesn't have to be the New Year's letdown like I experienced as a child. We honor and remember the past year and how God was present in it, and in the past years, not just the one. And we look with hope, joy, and yes, sometimes with apprehension to what lies ahead. We look forward with hope and joy because we know this. God in Jesus Christ is dwelling in this place and has gathered us together to walk alongside us as we walk alongside one another through our times of light, darkness, transition, and the beginnings or endings that we experience all the time. God is here. May we continue to be witnesses to the life and light that Jesus brings to every beginning. Amen.